For over 2,500 years, there's been this one short book that's been the secret weapon for generals, CEOs, and even football coaches. It's Sun Tzu's The Art of War. And here's the twist. It's less about the war part and way more about the art of winning. So today, let's unpack why its ancient wisdom feels more relevant now than ever before.
Right out of the gate, Sun Tzu completely flips the script. You hear the art of war, and you think of clashing armies, right? Big, heroic battles. But he says, nope, the best, the absolute most excellent victory is the one where you don't even have to fight. This isn't about being the strongest, it's about being the smartest. It's about outthinking your opponent so thoroughly that the battle is over before it even starts.
So who was this guy with these kind of radical ideas? Well, Sun Tzu wasn't just some philosopher thinking deep thoughts in a quiet room. He was a general, and there's this one legendary story about him that proves he didn't just talk the talk, he walked it, with some pretty terrifying conviction.
Okay, so get this. The king of Wu wants to see if Sun Tzu is the real deal. So he says, hey, can you train my 180 concubines to be soldiers? Sun Tzu's like, sure. He lines them up and gives a simple command, right turn. And what do? They just start giggling. But here's where it gets interesting. Sun Tzu doesn't yell at them. He blames himself. He says if the commands aren't clear, it's the general's fault. So he explains it all again, very carefully, gives the command again, and again, they just laugh. This time, though, his logic is chilling. He says, okay, if the orders are clear and the soldiers still disobey, then it's the fault of their officers. And just like that, he ordered the two leaders, who just happened to be the king's favorite concubines, to be executed on the spot. Suddenly, you could hear a pin drop. The next command was followed. Perfect.
As you can imagine, the king was horrified. He told Sun Tzu, okay, you've made your point, I'm satisfied. But Sun Tzu basically called his bluff. His message was sharp as a blade. Having a brilliant strategy, having a disciplined team, it's all completely useless if you don't have the guts to actually follow through. Talk is cheap, action is what wins.
That whole shocking display wasn't just about showing who's boss. It was a live demonstration of his entire philosophy. See, for Sun Tzu, wars aren't won on the battlefield with swords and spears. They're won way before that, with careful calculations made in the quiet of the planning tent. In fact, he laid out these 5 constant factors. Think of it like a master checklist you absolutely have to go through before any conflict. You have to weigh the moral law, which is all about the unity of your people, heaven, which are the conditions you can't control, like timing or the weather, earth, the literal ground you're fighting on, the terrain, the commander, meaning the quality of the leadership, and finally, method and discipline, the actual structure and logistics of your operation.
And of all those 5, you could argue that this one, the moral law, is the most powerful. This is about having your people, your team, your employees, your community so completely bought in and aligned with your vision that they will stick with you through anything. It creates this unbreakable bond of trust that is really your greatest source of strength.
All right, so once you've done your planning and your team's morale is solid, Sun Tzu moves on to his favorite tool in the toolbox. This is where it gets really interesting: psychological warfare. If the goal is to win without fighting, you have to get inside your opponent's head. This line right here, it's one of his most famous, and it is the absolute key to everything that follows. To win smartly and efficiently, you have to mislead, misdirect, and make your enemies see a reality that you've invented just for them. His whole method is about mastering perception. So, when you are at your absolute strongest, poised, and ready to make a move, you have to appear weak, disorganized, completely incapable. It's all about lulling your opponent into a false sense of security, making them underestimate you.
He also talks about messing with their perception of space. You make your competitor think you're totally focused on a problem way over there, while in reality, you're right next door, about to launch a surprise move. You force them to react to a ghost.
And of course, the reverse is just as powerful. You make a ton of noise about a big move that's really just a diversion. This forces your competitor to waste precious time, money, and energy getting ready for a threat that isn't even real. It keeps them constantly off balance.
This is just brilliant psychology. Sun Tzu knew that an arrogant opponent is a careless opponent. If you can feed their ego, let them think they have you all figured out, you encourage them to make the exact kind of sloppy mistakes that will lead to their own undoing. And it all comes together in this final trap. You dangle some kind of irresistible bait, a deal that looks too good to be true, a weakness that seems easy to exploit. You make it look like your own side is in chaos,
And when that overconfident enemy rushes in to take the bait, that's when you spring the trap and score a decisive, low-effort victory.
So all of these different pieces, the careful planning, the solid morale, the discipline, the constant deception, it all boils down to one single incredibly powerful idea. It's maybe the most famous piece of advice in the entire book. And this idea, it has two crucial parts. First, knowing your enemy, understanding their strengths, their weaknesses, how they think. That's what allows you to plan a smart attack. But just as important, maybe even more so, is knowing yourself. Understanding your own limits, your own blind spots, your own real strengths. That self-awareness, that's your armor. It's what makes you secure. And this is the ultimate payoff. When you achieve that total clarity, when you understand the landscape and your opponent, but also have zero illusions about yourself, you basically transcend the conflict. Victory isn't something you hope for anymore. It becomes a predictable outcome. The battle is already won.
And of course, he warns about what happens if you get this wrong. If you only know yourself but you're clueless about your opponent, well, that's a coin flip. For every win, you're going to take a loss. But if you know neither your enemy nor yourself, you will lose every single time. It's not a possibility, it's a certainty.
The thing is, this ancient text isn't really just for generals anymore. It's for anyone trying to navigate a complex, competitive world. Whether you're in a career negotiation, launching a new business, or even chasing a personal goal, these principles hold up. So, it leaves us with a question for you. In your life, right now, what battlefield are you preparing for?